Hello, Father Murr. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon to you, Dr. Robert Moynihan. How are you, sir?
Very well, and very
Good,
glad to see
good,
you
good.
because when you and I talk, we are able to get to the heart of the matter. And
I think so. Well, we do a pretty good job, don't we?
yeah, and what we're dealing with is a world gone mad. And
There's plenty of room for discussion on that one.
yeah, and so we're not going to resolve everything in 1 hour or even in 100 hours, but we're going to chip away and say that the Logos, who is the Word of God, gives us reason, gives us meaning, gives us hope. And this has been banished from our world because it's an anti-Christic, anti-Logos society due to its kind of focus on a kind of science, which is
Yeah.
often false and propagandistic. So that's my opening.
Well, I would second that. I would second
And
that. There's also what you said reminded me of an old Cole Porter song. Uh, what was it? Times have changed, and we've often rewound the clock since the
yes,
Puritans got a shock when they landed on Plymouth Rock. If today any shock they should try to stand, instead of landing on Plymouth Rock would land on them. In olden days, a glimpse of stocking was looked on as something shocking, but now, God knows, anything goes. That's the world we're living in. That's the
Father.
world. Anything goes.
Well, I didn't expect you to cite Cole Porter as scripture, but
You were waiting for something more sublime. I'm sorry.
no, what it means is that everybody knows our situation. Every
Yeah.
musician, every songwriter, they know that humanity is off the rails and heading into the abyss. And this is why everyone is often alienated, feeling alone, feeling isolated, without community, feeling underneath a kind of propaganda shell where ordinary things can't even be spoken. And this brings us to the topic of our conversation today, which is a remarkable occurrence in the United States of America of a very prominent football player who made some
I-
remarks at a commencement address in Kansas, Atchison, Kansas, at Benedictine College, where there are about 2,200 students. And he went there on May 11th, 11 days ago, and he spoke to the graduating students about what they could look forward to in their lives and urging them to live good lives and find happiness. And he said, among other things, that part of that happiness could be getting married and having children. Father Murray,
Ooh, that's
you can,
dangerous, isn't it?
well, in our society, it has become so. And I'm going to call up the picture, if I can, of this football player. Uh, and this is Harrison Butker, 28 years old. And he's on the Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City, Kansas. He's their kicker, means he kicks field goals and extra points. And he went to Georgia Tech. He's married, and he has 3 Super Bowl rings. So he's on the top American football team. And he is now one of the most controversial figures in America, but I have to tell you, he's been criticized on many talk shows. And he said in his talk, uh, addressing himself to the women in the graduating class, he said, I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Now, I have to say that Butker is a Roman Catholic, and he's attending Mass, and he's a believing Catholic. And then he went on to say, some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she started living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. Butker said that his wife had embraced one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. So, Father, what do you think happened after he made these remarks?
What do I think happened? First of all, yes, all the things you say are true, correct and true. One thing I would add to that also, I've got to turn this off. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One thing I would add to that, he is a traditional Latin Mass Catholic.
Hmm.
All right, I just add that too, not just Mass, but the Tridentine Mass.
Okay.
First of all, I don't disagree with one word he said. I thought that it was beautifully said. I listened to it a couple times. The emotion also in his voice was beautiful. He broke up a couple times just thinking of that love of his life, his wife, and their children. It was very beautiful. Let's make a distinction here, though. He did not say this is for all women. You remember your Aristotle, good Dr. Moynihan. You remember Aristotle always talks about universals and particulars, right?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
you've got to be very careful because those who are criticizing him for what he said are taking everything that he said as universals. That he
Yeah.
said this to all women in all places. No, he did not. He said most of you in that particular audience, right?
Yes.
Who he's
Yes.
talking to. It's very simple. The ones who criticize him for I don't know what they're talking about, condemning all women to this horrible plight of mothers and homemakers. That's not what he said at all. Not at all. Not at all. The I've got well, let's go on to this a little bit more, but I've got something else that's kind of curious in this whole matter that I think is sleeping beneath the surface of all of this.
Okay, I do too, but why don't you say it before you forget?
Well, I think you know me well enough to know that, right? That I do forget. I think that beneath the surface of all this is the pro-life, anti-abortion question. I
Yeah.
really do, because
Yeah.
the people that I've heard commenting who are against everything that he's saying are also pro-abortion,
Yeah.
and they take this as a threat, right? This is a
Yeah.
threat, and they dislike him because of that. Isn't it amazing? It's never mentioned. Abortion is
Right.
never mentioned. This whole thing, pro-life issues are not mentioned. This whole thing, but that's what's at the base of it. And you've got a lot of feminists who you and I both know feminists. As a matter of fact, we're so old. I'm so old. I was going to say we. You're not. You're a young man yet, but I'm old enough to tell you that I knew great feminists before anyone called them feminists.
Well,
And so did you. We knew outstanding women whose husbands died, whose husbands abandoned them, and they picked up the whole kit and caboodle and made it work.
yeah.
These were fantastic women. So that's the liberated women, the feminists that we're talking about today. They always existed. There were always great women who were independent minded, and there were always great women who became secretaries. Did I ever tell you this, Robert? I had my great aunt. I grew up in a very strange thing. I thought that all of these people were living to me. I thought we lived in Hollywood, we lived in Rome, we lived in everything else, but just by the names of places and people. But I had a great aunt. Her name was Auntie Mame.
Hmm.
It was Auntie Mame. Auntie Mame, and her last name was Russell, just like Rosalind Russell, who made the movie Auntie Mame, right?
Hmm.
And anyway, she was a secretary to a judge all of her life, independent. Her husband died. I don't think they were married 5 years when her husband died. One child during the Depression. She raised that. She kept. These were the great women in people's life. My grandmother, her husband abandoned her with 5 children during the Depression. Just left.
Yeah.
She made the whole thing work. These are great women, and we've all known them. So the whole thing of you have to be a feminist to be and be called a feminist to be successful as an independent woman is nonsense. There have always been great women. The problem here today is that feminism has become such a program, and it's been programmed into so many minds of so many young people that it's one whole package, and part of that package is pro-abortion.
Yeah.
And when they hear so many of them, when they hear a man like this talking the way he did, they immediately they panic because he's trying to take away their rights to kill their children or something. This is what I think is lying at the right underneath the surface of all of this. And
all right.
but he never said that. He never said that. And as a matter of fact, everything that he said it perfectly well and in a way that's absolutely wonderful. My take on it.
Okay, I do think there is that lying under it. And I also think there's something about the organization of our society in commercial and financial terms. Therefore, what I mean by that is that whoever the powers that be are have supported this idea of the satisfaction that comes from getting a check from someone else and going to an office and working many hours for those people, and putting on a secondary or third or fourth level the kingdom or the realm of the family, the home, being a homemaker. And this is a financialization even of the relationships of men and women. And it never was really what men themselves wanted to do with their lives. But
That's right.
no,
That's the irony, isn't it?
no. So it's really a type of financialization of human relations, which is presented as a way toward independence and freedom and self-confidence and self-worth. But in fact, this is where one part of the big, I don't know if I'll call it a big lie, but I'll call it a big sell, where people otherwise would look to build their families, their communities, their extended families. All of these things have been under attack in increasing ways for 50, 60, 70 years. And the proposal that a woman who earns a few $1,000s at a job, and of course is told that she can become a multimillionaire by rising to CEO, et cetera, and engage in this commercializing activity of life that men are also encouraged to engage in rather than a vocation. And this is what's happened with almost all of our fields of endeavor, including medicine, for example.
Yes.
Everyone who becomes a doctor in our society is 200,000 or 300,000 in medical school debt when they start, and they have to find things which make money, including the sale of pharmaceuticals, etc., in order to practice their medicine. So a lot of things are skewed in our society, and a voice against the skewness came from this football player. And I think that the entire world is now focusing on Kansas, and it's focusing on this college in Kansas, Benedictine College. They received, I think, tremendous publicity, and I think it's probably a wonderful college to attend. But the people also there's several points we have to make about this, Father. We talked before the show. And one is the reaction of the Benedictine sisters of Mount St. Scholastica, who are the sisters who participate and teach at the college. There's also some Benedictine monks and also some lay people. But the Benedictine sisters of Mount St. Scholastica, one of the founding sponsors of Benedictine College, issued a statement after May 11th's commencement address by this football player, contending it did not properly represent the college's values. And they said, quote, instead of promoting unity in our church, our nation, and the world, his comments seem to have fostered division. Quote, one of our concerns was the assertion that being a homemaker is the highest calling for a woman. It added, we sisters have dedicated our lives to God and God's people, including the many women whom we have taught. These women have made a tremendous difference in the world in their roles as wives and mothers, and through their God-given gifts in leadership, scholarship, and their careers. Father Murr, any comment on this reaction of the sisters?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, who's saying the contrary?
Well, that's true. They didn't completely,
No, who's
they
saying the
weren't faithful.
contrary?
Yeah, they weren't
Yeah,
faithful to what he himself had said. Go ahead.
yeah, no, exactly. And the point is, here they're starting, I think, with the wrong premise. They're beginning. It almost sounds like they're blaming him and people with his opinions on fostering division. And
Good
there's a
point.
lack of unity in the church. Well, that's not his fault. How in the world is that his fault? The division that we have in the Catholic Church, for example, has nothing to do with this poor man. This has been going on for five decades, six probably, and
Yeah.
it's getting worse all the time. That he comes up with a contrary to popular opinion is the problem. So I guess you're not supposed to have an opinion that's contrary to the popular opinion.
Well, Father,
Is that what?
yeah,
What?
yes, we have kind of a Soviet society now in the so-called free world or free West. It's obvious. We cannot
Yes.
speak
You
our
know,
own
yeah.
minds. We possibly will end up having this show be blocked or something. But we've got two comments here that refer to what I was saying, but also relate to what you Chris H., thank you for writing, Chris. Economy is rigged in a way that both husband and wife must work in order for the family to afford a house, which later cannot be inherited by one of the kids, as this will attract huge inheritance tax. So, this is an economic critique that I'm making. I think it's underlying some of the things that Butker, the football player, made. And it's a desire to support families and to support husbands and wives and to support wives who wish to be mothers and have children and have time to raise their children. And on our beginning series of covers of the magazine, we have the Virgin Days of Jesus Christ. And I put in my editorial, the most important work that a mother can do is to gaze into the eyes of her child, creating fundamental trust, helping to create the the organization and depth and receptivity of another soul, a soul that's of infinite value, infinite worth, as the Vatican also infinite dignity, as the Vatican recently remarked. But our society doesn't give support to that. So that's my first point. I agree with Chris.
As,
Thank you.
as a matter of fact, Robert, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, our society tells people point blank that they cannot possibly afford more than 1.6 children.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I mean,
This is
without trying to live any other way, they already know this is inculcated.
well,
This is what they're being taught.
I couldn't agree more. I agree completely with what you just said. And on 1.6 is less than replacement. We've got a lot of people that don't have one, and they're getting to be 50, 60, 70, 80, and they don't have
Mhm.
anybody to take care of them in any way, to visit them, to help them put on their coat, to take a walk. And as people get older, then they're going to be turning to others outside the family to come take care of them. And all the funds that were in that family will go for the final years of medical care because the family didn't grow. And Antonia is writing, if the feminists and the men who employ them are so happy and fulfilled, they wouldn't be enraged when this guy just says it's wonderful and fulfilling to be a mom.
Couldn't agree more, Antonia. You're absolutely right. Yep.
Thank you, Antonia. So then there's one more statement here from Chris again. Moreover, if both must work, then the kids will necessarily be brought up by the state. It's a little bit of a leap there, but some truth in it. No homeschooling, so that the state will manage to mess up the kids we all know what ideologies. Well, I do think there is an economic factor, and then there's a moral factor and a pro-life factor, as you said. So let's go back and consider why it is that we need a football player who is. Let's see if we can put Butker up there again on the screen. Why does it take this man to speak out? And why, when he speaks out, is he so vilified, even by the nuns at the college where he spoke? Father?
You give it to me, that question, huh? Well, first of all, many, not all, but many of our poor religious sisters have been brainwashed since the 1960s. They simply have. And many of them have espoused even abortion. They're pro-abortion. Many nuns that I know are pro-abortion. This is amazing. And they talk about division. Well, that's part of a division because that's not the teaching of the church on a very important and fundamentally important matter of life. We need this kind of a person because if I say that, or if you say that, something like what he said, it's expected of us. It's expected of us. We've had this program, Robert, for years. The world has not set up and noticed, nor has the world applauded us or condemned us. It's just we're listened to by good people, but we can't make the impact that this young man
Well,
has made. This man
well,
belongs in the world. He's in the world and he's not of the world. And when he speaks not of the world, while in it, it makes great news because he's contradicting. He's swimming against the current, and he's doing a fantastic job of it. I applaud him.
okay. So I do too, and that's why we're having our show about him. So, Father, here we are. I've got the NFL, which is the sort of oversight committee over the entire National Football League. It itself distanced itself from Butker's graduation speech. It took the
No
time to issue.
surprise there. No surprise.
It said quote, Harrison Butker gave a speech in his personal capacity. Are you kidding me? Of course he gave it in his personal capacity.
Of
What
course, yes.
what are we? Is it news story when someone speaks his mind? Okay, apparently yes, we have a kind of hive culture, and we are down to the last dregs of free speech. And here we go. Jonathan Bean, NFL Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, said in a statement
What a
released
title.
Thursday. There, thank you, Jonathan. His
I'm sure,
views,
yes. Go
quote,
ahead.
his views are not those of the NFL as an organization. The NFL is steadfast in our commitment to inclusion, which only makes our league stronger. The Kansas City Chiefs declined to comment on Butker's commencement address, but the wife of Chiefs chairman and CEO Clark Hunt, Tavia Hunt, wrote a lengthy Instagram post addressing some of Butker's remarks. And then she said, I did always encourage my daughters to be highly educated and chase their dreams. I do want them to know that they can do whatever they want that honors God. But I also want them to know that I believe finding a spouse who loves and honors you as or before himself and raising a family together is one of the greatest blessings this world has to offer. Studies show that committed married couples with children are the happiest demographic, and this has been my experience as well. Affirming in motherhood and praising your wife, as well as highlighting the sacrifice and dedication it takes to be a mother, is not bigoted. It is empowering to acknowledge that a woman's hard work in raising children is not in vain. Countless highly educated women devote their lives to nurturing and guiding their children.
Of course.
Someone disagreeing with you doesn't make them hateful. It simply means they have a different opinion. Let's celebrate families, motherhood and fatherhood. Our society, this is still Tavia, Tavia Hunt, the wife of the owner of the football team. Our society desperately needs dedicated men and women to raise up and train the next generation in the way they should go. Tavia Hunt. Father Murr?
Yes, she's making all the points that we've been saying too. It's surprising I guess what's surprising but not surprising is the degree of hatred with which his work.
Okay, Father Murr. Okay, I believe he's got a communication problem for just a moment. He said before the program that his internet may not be working so well today. Father Murr, he did say to me that he would come back if the internet stopped. So I can tell you something a little bit about Benedictine College. And there are a number of colleges in America like Benedictine, there's about 20 or 25 of them, which are small, like 2,000, 3,000, 1,000 students. And they say that they are particularly devoted to church teaching and practice, and they have not become these 30 or 40,000 strong colleges, which are imitating the other secular colleges in many ways. So these small colleges have been recommended by the Cardinal Newman Society, a group that puts out a guide every year to the best Catholic colleges, and it favors these 24 conservative colleges that exhibit what it calls faithful Catholic education. So Benedictine is one of those. It's got 2,200 students. It's located in Atchison, Kansas, Atchison, about 60 miles north of Kansas City. It was originally founded in 1858. Its enrollment is about 2,200. And the other schools in this list include Thomas More in Nashua, New Hampshire, Ave Maria University in Florida, Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, and also Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., which is flourishing. The Society's ranking says Benedictine benefits from having monks in residence, multiple masses and prayer groups, spiritually focused organizations, and theology programs. And the enrollment at Benedictine has doubled in the past 20 years, and perhaps through this new fame, due to the mention of, due to the commencement address given by Harrison Butker, the college may grow even further in the years to come. Annual tuition is supposed to be $35,000, but Benedictine says 100% of its students receive some form of financial aid. We have a couple other remarks that we had intended to go through. I hope Father joins us again to comment. And one was from Maria Shriver, who was the daughter of Eunice Shriver, who was the sister of President John Kennedy and Senator Robert Kennedy, both of whom were shot to death in the 1960s. So Eunice Kennedy married Sergeant Shriver, and their daughter was Maria Shriver, and she married Arnold Schwarzenegger and became the governor of California. Schwarzenegger became the governor. She was the first lady of California. They later were divorced, and Maria Shriver has carried forward many activities in our country, nonprofit activities. And she made a comment. Here she is, a picture of her, and here's Butker, the football player. She said, "As a woman who has leaned into my vocation," and that was a phrase Butker used in his address, that his wife had leaned in to support him and to lean into her vocation of being a mother. "As a woman who has leaned into my vocation of living a meaningful life inside and outside the home to not only raise good humans, but also raise up our country in various ways, I think it's demeaning to women to imply that their choices outside of wife and motherhood pale in comparison to that of a homemaker." And I guess that's the point. Yeah. Butker says they do pale in comparison. but that our whole society regards that as demeaning. This is precisely the point on which this issue is resting now. Did he demean women by saying that choices outside of wife and motherhood are paling in comparison to that of being a homemaker? I guess that's what the society is trying to decide. And the issue now is that the elites in the society attack anybody and try to demean them who says what Butker said. But the ordinary people in society, even now, after a half a century of continual propaganda, still somehow long for the joy that comes from having a family. They hope and dream that it might be possible. But the entire society is stacked against and trying, pretending to say, we're giving you something that will be more joyful. Quote, it took a revolution to get women the right to vote, to get women birth control pills, to get women to be able to put their names on a checking account, to get them maternity leave, to get them anything close to pay equity, to get elected to office, to get them where they are today. Okay, so she's very clear that Butker represents an impediment to all of these things. I think it's a distortion, a profound distortion of what he said. I think what he actually said was that the unit that the husband and wife create in their family can be so successful and so supportive of the happiness of both that they become a healthy cell in society that no power can crack apart. But that somehow in our society, this has been placed under enormous strain, under the strain of propaganda from the media, from Hollywood. And he probably would have something to say in response to what she said. But this is the type of critique that is being made of his remarks, as if what he said was demeaning to women when he said, look forward to the fact that possibly you will have the vocation and joy of a spouse and a family. This is what cannot be stated any longer in our society. Pretty amazing. Okay, next slide. We have a link here to the full speech. You can find it in the National Catholic Register, News, and Butker's speech at Benedictine. Okay, you can look that up yourself. Next. I guess we don't have any. So I'm here without Father Murr, and I'm sad to be on my own because he always balances everything. And what we do together is try to observe and analyze the events facing us now in our world and in our church. In our world, we obviously have enormous turmoil and war in Ukraine. In Ukraine, perhaps 500,000 young Ukrainian men have been killed. And my position always was that war should not have begun. If my position had been followed, we could have had the saving of those 500,000 lives. I don't know how many on the Russian side have been killed. I think the number may be less. There's debate about it. I think their estimates are that it's much less than 500,000. The two countries should have found a way to somehow reach a solution of their disagreements without going to war. As we now stand after 2 years, the Russians have taken control of about 15% of the country, but it looks like no chance for peace talks is occurring. No negotiations are on the horizon. I've had a number of conversations in diplomatic circles, both in Rome and elsewhere, where I've tried to see and support and communicate the desire to reason together and come to an end of the bloodletting. But there is no indication now that there will be peace talks. Therefore, the war shall proceed to its conclusion. The Ukrainians are in deep difficulty. The country has suffered enormously. And I pray every day that there will be a just peace that will be found. And I am terribly sad that all of this has occurred. Equally so for the situation in Israel with Gaza. It's a terrible loss of 30 or 40,000 civilian lives on the side of the people in Gaza, in addition to the more than 1,000 Israelis who were killed in that first incursion on October 7th. I wish deeply that there could be a discussion and a peace agreement, because the present trajectory of this war is continued death. The recent events in Slovakia, where the prime minister was shot as he was walking across a little piazza, and then a man about 70 pulled out his gun and shot him. It seemed like the Slovakian prime minister didn't really have much security around him. There's a video on the internet that shows the shooting, and he was hustled. The man who shot was taken under arrest. He apparently is someone associated with more leftist groups and perhaps with George Soros, according to the internet. I cannot say I know this for sure. I've read this on the internet, and he's about 70 years old. The prime minister of Slovakia is living. He was very nearly killed, and his name is Mr. Fico, F-I-C-O, and he is still in the hospital. He had done two things that made many people upset with him. He had said he was not continuing to support arms shipments to Ukraine. He did not wish Ukraine to continue and expand its... Oh, here's Father Murr. Father.
I missed the best part. I'm so sorry.
Well, I made a kind of summary of the Butker case, and I said that our society doesn't really permit the speaking out of a choice for marriage and family. And it must secularize everything, including the sacred institution of marriage, and say women lose out unless they have secular jobs, secular income, secular vote. And so it's an entirely different worldview than the traditional Christian view, and other religions as well. So it's a secularizing and totalitarian view of human life that's focused solely on economic interests in this world. Then I started to go on to my other concerns and prayers about peace in the world, the war in Ukraine, the war in Israel. And right then you came on. I was talking about the assassination attempt on the prime minister of Slovakia, and then you re-entered the program.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So I guess we have a few minutes left, and we could try to give a religious, spiritual, Christian analysis of our predicament right now with our social maladies and our social malaise as represented. And I didn't say publicly yet, and I mentioned to you before, there is a sale of football jerseys, which wear number 7. That's the football player's number. Butker has number 7. They sell them to men and to women, and they sell them by the hundreds usually. But this last 10 days, the orders for Butker's number 7 football jersey have been in the thousands. They've sold out completely. And the one that's most sold out, or first sold out, is the women's version. The one that women can wear. In other words, all over America, women have bought the football jersey of Harrison Butker, number 7, and they want to wear it because he represents something positive to them. What could that be, Father Murr?
It could be religious values, godly values. You know, Robert, we live in the United States of America. You do anyway, and I'm still an American citizen.
That's right. You're in
I
Spain.
cannot emphasize how it's how deeply the United States has changed. We used to hold freedom of speech as sacrosanct. It was absolutely it was what defined us as Americans. It really did. I've traveled the world. You have too, even more than I. You know very well that in most societies, freedom of speech doesn't even exist. You could not criticize the government. You could not criticize the status quo. In the United States, you always could. You always could until recently. Until recently. That freedom of speech is gone. And if you are not completely in agreement with what is told to us see, Robert, this is not even the majority opinion to be in favor of what this young man said in his speech. It's not the majority are against him. A minority are against him, but it's being presented as the majority, the vast majority. I just heard on a broadcast there was what a hateful woman, really hateful woman, presented a critique of his speech, just and did it grave injustice because what she was saying was absolutely a lie, point by point, lies, lies, lies. But she said the following. Imagine saying this. He's not only Catholic. He's not only Catholic, but he's one of those Latin Mass Catholics that are so dangerous, They're a little sect unto themselves, and they have all sorts of dangers about them. Red flags come up whenever you talk. This group, they're militant, this is incredible. This is incredible. And this was on national, international television.
Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, this is
talking.
crazy. What
Yeah,
I'm trying to say is what he said in his speech is what the majority, and I would say the majority of Americans, certainly the majority of the world holds as true. But it's being presented as something that 0.02% believe. And the majority rejects this. This is absolutely, this is unconscionable. It's the way it's being presented. It really is.
Well, Father Merrin, I guess in the few minutes, the small time we have left, we could offer 3 or 4 points of reflection about this Mass and explain that what people are saying about it is also wildly distorted. And I would initiate by offering one point. That Mass was celebrated every Sunday in every Catholic church for 400 years, and based on I'm saying it was codified in 1570, and just after the closing of the Council of Trent, it was trying to make sure there were no variations, that the church was presenting a common liturgy. But the liturgy dates back much more than 1570. It dates back at least to Gregory the Great around 600 AD, and is rooted.
And most scholars, Robert, would put parts of the Roman canon as far back as the apostles in apostolic time. So this is what we're coming from. And let me just say this: the Latin Mass is, first of all, it's here to stay. It's not going away anywhere, because finally, after 50 years of telling us quietly that it was illegal to say, it was almost immoral to say. As a matter of fact, I remember, Robert, asking permission and being told that to say it would be sinful to say this. Man, it's incredible. It got to that extreme. My point with all of this is that people have rediscovered it thanks to Pope Benedict, who came out and said it was never sinful, it was never wrong, it was never incorrect. Okay. This was always a good Mass, right? Now, what people have done today, what Catholics, really strong Catholics who know their faith, many of them, there are some who don't, but most of them do, have taken this as a way to be, first of all, to get closer to God, to understand what the Mass is, to be closer in relationship to God, with God. But also, it's a point of counterculturalism. It is against the culture that is pro-death, anti-life, anti-God, anti-family, anti-woman, anti-man, anti-children. It is a way of saying no to all of that. And this is what people are coming to it more and more and more for all of these reasons. It's a marvelous Mass. I offer it every day. I offer it every day. And it's wonderful. And we have that freedom to do that thanks to Pope Benedict, right? Now, to say that percentage, that tiny little percentage out there, this man has got to be out of his mind. You see, he belongs to these wackos out here. That's what you were saying. That's really what you were saying. Yeah. And angry. You know what, Robert? I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I still have to meet a happy feminist. Why can't they be happy? What is to be so angry and so upset about?
Well,
and how many people hold contrary views to yours, Robert, and to mine? Yeah, do we get upset, scream, and yell and rant and rave? No.
Father, I have to interject two things quickly.
Do so.
Ideology in its very nature is not personal. The essence of the Christian,
right? But they've made it so.
Yeah, all ideologies are kind of mental structures which trump, as we might say, not to use a pun, but they trump the reasoning faculty. In other words, the ideology is what you follow. You have a series of points, you follow them. It makes you less free to engage someone who's disagreeing with you. Your first principle is to arrest that person and execute them. Typical was the communist who arrested the wealthy, noble woman who was taking care of children, taking care of hospitals, and she would say, why do you wish to arrest and execute me? Because you are a member of the ruling class. In other words, ideology. So right. Feminism is another type of ideology which immediately focuses on one half of the human race, women, the feminine, and leaves aside the males. And their first principle is that there's an inevitable and eternal war or conflict between the male and the female at the root of it. But our very life comes from the coming together of men and women in marriage and making children. So the ideology is to begin by dividing and then insisting that division is based on this, that, and the other thing. The second thing is my own mother was a very strong woman, and she became a professor. She actually got a PhD from Yale University in American history. She was at Smith College, and she knew Sylvia Plath, the famous poetess who later took her own life, sadly. And Sylvia wrote a letter to her when she got married and had me. And so I knew through my mother the way a woman can be an intellectual. She can be a researcher, a historian, an analyst, and also the mother of a number of children. We had 7 children in our family. But she was always mocked, either quietly or openly, by other people at the university, particularly at Yale. They regarded anybody with 7 children as weak-minded. If I can quickly cut to the chase. So I think there's a new age here that's still ahead of us where we can respect the role of the mother, give it great dignity. We can respect the mind and intelligence of the woman, give it great dignity, and we can end the eternal warfare, at least to some extent, between men and women, and that this is the Christian position. That's my thought.
Well, I have to go back to something that you said, which it had never occurred to me, and I thought was very funny at the same time, very ironic. You're saying when women started going out to these jobs, that even men didn't want to go out to.
Well,
And it's true.
no, no.
I know so many men who almost had nervous breakdowns at the age of 50 because they had to go to the office every day. This, that, and the other thing. Just the whole thing of getting there and back and living there and being there and under the pressure. Men didn't want to do this. They didn't want to do it themselves. And women, to become equal to men, took something that men didn't want to do themselves. I think that's the irony is delicious. But
yeah,
the point is, we also, I came from a family of 8 children, 7 survived. And our mother was, I thought my mom was brilliant. Brilliant. If it weren't for her, my father's construction company would never have lasted. She ran the whole office of it. I never grew up seeing. I told you at the beginning of this, my grandmother was abandoned by her husband and left with 5 children in 1929, at the height of the Depression. She made it with flying colors. Went to work, got and raised 5 children. I've always been surrounded by women who have been strong women with great values, and they've always been Catholic. I never saw any problem. All of a sudden, there's this division, and I think the division is artificial. That's what I'm saying. It's not. This is not right. This is not right. And they're talking about the world being divided and this, that, and the other thing. The world is divided because they've divided it. They have divided it. What we're talking about, what you're talking about your mother, I'm talking about mine. These are great women that always existed. Always existed. They didn't just come into being after the Gloria Steinem came into existence.
Father, we have a comment here. Do you see it?
Robert Nugent.
Great discussion, he says.
Oh yes. Well, he's got to be an intelligent man, of course.
Yeah, I think we're onto something in this regard, that the misery that humans cause one another is often not natural. In other words, we can fight against a hurricane. We can say, "Do you need something to cover your windows? Do you need any extra water?" People come together in natural. If there's a volcano, oh my God, let's go underground, or let's escape. If there's a freezing weather, you need any clothes or you heat out, people come together. But when you betray someone, or when you oppress someone, or you cheat someone, or you tell an old woman, here, just sign here for your estate, and we'll move it over here to this little trust. And then she discovers that they took it all away from her.
Yeah.
These betrayals that are human break the heart and break the soul. And this is what Jesus was always telling: repent, treat your neighbor as someone that you love like yourself. And the society would not be this jungle that it's become, with syringes.
Let me hitch right onto that, Robert. Not to be forgotten, ever. Western civilization has done great things for the dignity of man and the dignity of women. Great things. No other society in the history of the world has given more honor and prestige to women and to men than our society. And it is based on Christian principles. It is based on Jesus Christ and on the gospel ethic that has done this. Before Christ, women were treated as property. They simply were. That's all there was to it. A man could divorce his wife by kicking her out of the house, literally, in Jewish law. That was it. That would be a decree of divorce. No rights, no property rights, no nothing. All of a sudden, Christ came along and said, just a minute. In the beginning, it wasn't like this. That was never the intention. In the beginning, they were created man and woman. And I'm talking like Joe Biden. You know the rest. But I'll say it. A man shall leave his mother and father, and a woman her mother and father, and the two shall become one, and they shall not be separated. That was equality that our Lord gave to women. This is fantastic. Equality. They didn't have it before. They had it with Christ. And he insisted that they have those rights. They have those rights. until death do them part. This is fantastic. This changed the history of the world. Has it always been perfect? No, it's never, well, because nothing is ever perfect. We understand that. However, the very principles that women are on, that feminists are screaming from right now, the platform they're on was provided by Christ. Let me put it that way.
Well,
it was.
Yeah, these are
Look
profound.
anywhere else. Look anywhere else in the world, and you see, if you see women standing up and speaking their minds, so much as in Christian societies.
Well,
No.
it's never a mistake to tell the truth, and there is in Catholicism a tremendous veneration for the Virgin Mary. She's considered the solitary boast of the entire human race. That is, a person so profoundly good, willing to sacrifice her own pleasure, her own desire to bring about, to participate in, to bring forth the Savior of the world, and to also raise him and in a real way even encourage and instruct him into his ministry, saying to him, let help to turn the water into wine, if you recall that. And at the cross,
his first miracle at the behest of his mother, right?
yeah, and at the cross, her heart was utterly transfixed, pierced by sorrow as she sees the death, mocked and ridiculed and bleeding of her son. This is the mother of the church. This is the place, St. Mary's, in many, many communities across the country and across the world, is the sanctuary dedicated to the Blessed Mother. And she was not a woman without strength. Obviously, she was of enormous strength, and in her
one of my favorite quotes of G.K. Chesterton was this. He wrote on the Blessed Mother, Our Lady of Sorrows. And traditionally, there were 7 great sorrows in the life of Mary. And if you look at art, you see 7 swords passing through her heart, Our Lady of Sorrows. But G.K. Chesterton says that many people stop and meditate on those 7 swords through her heart, and they forget to see the great sword she holds in her hand, of might, of power in attacking the enemy. This is the Blessed Virgin Mary. She's given, my goodness, how many men pay tribute to this woman? How many men in the history of the world have loved this woman, have died for her honor? It's fantastic.
Well,
anyway,
absolutely.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. You were, but I just wanted to add that her strength. There's no one stronger than the Blessed Virgin Mary. If women want to take a model of strength, it is absolutely Mary, the Mother of God.
Okay, and so we're having to wrap up. I appreciate that very much, Father Murr. I wanted to announce that I am finally going to do something I said a year or 2 ago I would do, and I didn't do it. I'm going to take this book, which is this is the book by Annibale Bugnini. It's a thick book, and I've been reading it, and I've been trying to understand every move that he made. I'm kind of like tracking him down after 50 years, if you follow me, because he wrote this himself to defend what he did. And this is the description of how he made the new Mass out of the old Latin Rite. And I've got a series that I've sketched out that will analyze and reveal everything that he did. At the same time, I'm going to take the book of Joseph Ratzinger, The Reform of the Liturgy, and explain how he was able to find in the old liturgy the profound beauty and truth that it always was granted for 2,000 years or for 1,500 years. Then there's a book out by Mr. Wemhoff, which describes the role of intelligence services at the Second Vatican Council. And I've been reading that book for 2 or 3 years now. So, Father, I'm 2 or 3 years behind schedule. What am I going to do?
That's fantastic. What a great project, Robert. Are you kidding? That's fantastic.
One of the things they wanted was to make the church the ancillary handmaid to the secular power. That is, not have it focus so much on sacred things, but to focus more on human affairs, human justice.
And aren't we there today?
Yeah. So
and
all
aren't
of this,
we there today?
So all of this, yes, all of this
That's
was done by All of this was done by human beings and can be undone in the future. And I'm going to try to provide the material that will enable people.
God
we don't have,
willing, God hear you. Yes.
yeah. So I wanted to make that announcement. Mark Brammer, I wanted you to hear that.
That's great. That's great. I congratulate you. I look forward to reading it. When do you think it's going to be finished?
Well, I'll try to get it done in 365 days from today, everything. I'll be publishing along the way. We'll be discussing parts of it in these podcasts.
God love you.
And we'll continue to call for the release of
Robert,
the
we're
Gagnon
breaking
report.
up. On my part, we're breaking up again.
We're breaking up.
Absolutely.
Breaking up is hard to do.
Murder in the 33rd degree. It
Father
certainly
Murr.
is. God bless. Until next week, Robert.
Thank you for your blessing. Thank you, Father. Goodbye to everyone.